Hello, this is the Irish myth of the Dream of Oengus, just to give my brain a bit of a break from all the other things I'm doing at the moment. Long ago, in the earliest of days, Oengus MacOg, the most handsome and charming and debonair of the gods themselves of the Tuatha De Danann, dwelt in Ireland, and there he spread the power of love throughout the land. He brought love between man and woman, between man and man, between woman and woman, between bull and cow, between he-goat and she-goat, between dog and bitch, between all beings. He spread love and passion and desire. And without him, there would have been no coupling, no bonding, no joining together in the Emerald Isle itself. But for all that Oengus spread love, inspired love, stirred the hearts and the loins of countless beautiful young women and handsome young men, and those not so handsome and not so beautiful and not so young, for all of that, love itself never touched him in here. At least it didn't until that fateful evening, when strolling along the banks of the River Boyne, near the palace that had once belonged to his father. As the sun went down low and the stars were just beginning to shine through, he saw swimming, sailing down the river, a swan, the most beautiful swan he had ever seen, a dam of the most elegant and exquisite sort, and around her neck was a golden chain of the most delicate, intricately made filigree. And he watched and he watched and he watched until she sailed out of his line of vision, off into the gathering dusk. And that night, when he went home to bed, his long day done, as soon as his head hit the pillow, he began to dream. He dreamt and he dreamt and he dreamt. He had the Ajlinga, the passion dream, the vision dream. And in that dream, a swan came to him, a swan with a golden filigree chain. And as he watched, that swan shifted and turned and changed and became the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life, and he had seen many. She had the long, pale neck that was reminiscent of a swan, and around that neck was a chain of filigree gold. She had such beautiful eyes, such magnificent hair, such a body, such a character, such a warmth and a gentleness, such humour, such wit, such wisdom. All night long he dreamed of her as they talked and they talked and they talked and they talked. She romanced him, just as for so many thousands of years he had romanced the people of Ireland and elsewhere. And when he awoke in the morning, bleary-eyed and exhausted, he felt as if he had not slept a wink. And that day he wandered around in something of a daze, barely aware of the people around him and not really attending to his divine duties. And the next night was the same, and the next and the next and the next, until those bleary-eyed days became exhaustions, until people around him began to notice that he was hardly eating, he was hardly drinking, he was doing very little of the things that gods are expected to do, that love was not being spread about the world. Neither amongst the humans, nor the cattle, nor the goats, nor the horses, nor the squirrels in the trees, nor anyone else. Even the birds that flew around him when he was awake, referred to as the kisses of Oengus, they looked tired, they lolled about. They were not the sprightly, energetic beings that they had once been. And at length, Oengus's mother, Boan, called to him and said, "Son, what is wrong with you?" And after She plied him, and she plied him with her concern. Eventually he opened up and said, "Mother, I dream night after night, I dream of this woman. She comes to me." Well, Barn spoke to her husband, the Dagda, and he spoke to his son and saw how ill he was becoming, how thin, that he hadn't eaten, he hadn't drunk, he wasn't sleeping properly. He could barely concentrate on a conversation for more than 5 minutes before his attention was wandering away. And they sent for all the best physicians who came and took his pulse and looked in his eyes and shone lights in other places we won't think about and tested him for everything they could think to test him for. And one after another suggested this remedy or that remedy, these herbs, those potions, and they tried all of it and none of it made a bit of difference. Till eventually, after they'd tried all of the other healers in the land, they turned to Barv the Red, who came, a great massive bear of a man with a huge ginger beard and great streaming red hair, someone with the build of a Highland caber tosser rather than of a great healer, but a great healer he was. He came and he looked at Oengus MacCog and he asked him all manner of questions and he studied him in great depth, and at length he said, "What ails your son is the Asian, the dream that possesses him. This is no ordinary dream, this is a dream of fairy kind. This woman who comes to him, she is no figment of his imagination, she is a woman of the other people, of the strange wild people, of the ancient land who are here even before we gods were here. And she visits him each night in his dreams, and for all of her loving and caressing, it is to his soul a torment to wake and find that she is as insubstantial as a dream. There are but two cures for what ails Oengus MacCog. Either he must find the woman, or he will die. One or the other." And so the Dagda and his wife Boan instituted a search the length and breadth of Ireland. They sent messengers here and heralds there, people running hither and yon, searching and searching and searching, all of them equipped with a description of the woman in the dream with a gold chain about her neck, and they searched for a full long year. Some say even up to 3 years they may have searched, before they came back at last with a message that there was one such woman who had been seen on rare occasions living with an old man in the great tower at Lochbel Drachon, over into the west, into the province of Connaught. And so at once the Dagda and Boan and Oengus and the great court formed a royal entourage, and they travelled across Ireland and they came to that region. And there, in the great province of Connaught, they met with the king and queen of Connaught, as was due and proper. When you enter into somebody else's territory, you first see the leaders and put the case to them. A great banquet was held, a great feast was held, and at the end of it, through which Oengus MacCog ate nothing and drank nothing, but sat there looking as thin could be, halfway to dead, if not 3/4 of the way there. At the end of it, they put the case to the king and queen of Connaught, and they said, "Yes, we know the Lochbel Drachon. It is in the hold of the Prince Ale, and he does have a daughter, and she is said by all who have seen her to be remarkably beautiful. Perhaps she is the one." A message was sent. A messenger came back, saying from Ale that he would not attend and give his daughter's hand in marriage to someone he had never met and knew nothing of. And so the king and queen of Connaught, not being people who easily took no for an answer, especially the queen, Maeve was known for her determination, sent a second invite in the presence of 60 rather large, burly, heavily armed men, who came back bringing the Prince Ale with them and deposited him in the royal court in front of the king and the queen and their revered guests. And after some interrogation, Ale explained that his daughter was under the duress of a magical spell that had been placed upon her many a long year ago, And this spell was such that she dwelt now no longer as the beautiful young woman that they had all heard tell of, but she dwelt in the shape and form of a swan. And she was in the form of a swan all year round, bar for Samhain night itself, at the centre of that 7-day feast, that one night when she would become as a woman again. And at once they set out to the lake, for it was already in to Samhain itself. They were in the depths of the festival, and they travelled as fast as you can when you're carrying on a bier a man so thin and wan and pale as to be almost like a corpse already. They went as fast as they could, but when they arrived at the lake's side, it was just too late. That one 24-hour window had already passed, and when they looked upon the great lake, they saw a huge gathering of swans, a lamentation of swans, for such is the name for a great group of swans. And as they looked closely, they saw that these swans swam around in pairs, and for each of these pairs they had silver filigree chains about their neck, with a delicate silver thread linking the pairs together. And old Ale said to Oengus, who lay on a bier at the side of the great lake, "If you are able to find my daughter in the midst of all these, and even I cannot recognise which one she is, for one swan looks much like any other swan to me, then you may call to her and you may, well, see what happens." Oengus MacCog propped himself up on one elbow, and he called for his harp, and weak as he was, he plucked a note or 3 or 4 or 5 upon it, and he began to sing in a voice rusty with disuse, and he called of his love for this maiden, for this maid whose name was Caer Ibormeith. He called for her. And looking amongst the swans, he saw one upon the lake who had gold instead of silver about her neck, and who was unjoined to any of the others. And as he watched, that swan swam closer and closer until she came to the very bank of the lake, and then she waddled up onto the land itself, and she lay her head in Oengus's lap. And he, being one who could speak the language of birds, knew that she was the woman of his dreams, and that she had dreamt of him for all that long time, just as he had dreamt of her, and she was as much in love with him as he was with her. But the spell was upon her. There was nothing she could do, and he could hardly marry a swan. This isn't one of those kinds of stories. And so he did what men do, perhaps only in myth. Who knows? He changed himself for her. He worked the act of magic so that his frail, wasted body turned into a beautiful, elegant swan, the cob to her dam. And as the two birds curved their necks about each other as swans will, he was healed of the wasting sickness. His energy, his vigour, his life came back to him, and instead of an emaciated swan, there was a full and vigorous, healthy swan, and around his neck there formed a chain of filigree gold, and a delicate thread joining from his neck to hers. And it is said that from that day to this they may be seen flying through the skies of Ireland, and sometimes sitting upon the lakes, not just of Loch Beldachon, but of other lakes too, flying together forever, accompanied by those 150 other swans that are her handmaidens, that spread the love that both Caer and Oengus feel throughout the world, carrying it to all corners of the earth. And during those periods when she is a swan, he is a swan. But during those times when she changes back to a woman, he changes back to a man, that they may always be jointly matched, one for the other, and their love persists from that day to this, and from this day until the end of time.